everyone, to Angel Heart Radio. I'm your host, Deb Goldberg, and it brings me great pleasure to be here with you today, and it's an honor to serve you in the highest way that I can by bringing you messages of divine love and blessings for your life. You are dearly loved, cherished, and blessed. We have a great show for you tonight. It's a new program that Susan, Frink Anderson, and I have got together about, and we're calling it Universal Divine Healing Ministry. And we want you to be able to call in and share your miracle stories of how you were healed by the divine, or call us for guidance, prayers, and blessings. And the phone number is 347-202-0232. And I'm going to take calls 20 minutes into the show, because Susan and I want to do some talking first. But I do want to introduce the other podcast hosts, which is Anaya Joy Halili, who is on Angel Heart Radio. She's the founder of Angel Heart Radio. And her show airs on Fridays, USA time at 8 o'clock p.m. every other week. Saturdays, Queensland time at 10 o'clock a.m. And Annette McCoy is the other podcast show host, and her podcast is on Tuesdays at 8 o'clock p.m. on USA time, and Wednesdays 10 o'clock a.m. Queensland time. And you'll have to excuse me tonight. I have my tea because I have a cough. So I'm going to be wetting my whistle a lot. And so you can also reach Anaya at angellight777.com. And if you're interested in knowing more about me or working with me or my books, you could find me at debbieandgoldberg.com. You can find my books, Are You Ready to Listen, God, and God's Covenant, on Amazon. And book 3 hopefully will be out by the end of the month. So without further ado, I want to introduce Susan, who is she's just amazing. I met her at a workshop in the Florida Keys last November, and it was definitely a divinely ordered encounter, as we are kindred soul sisters. And it is not often that you meet someone who is receiving the same divine messages and purpose as yourself. And so we've become fast friends, and I'm so grateful that she's been brought into my life, as she's such a gift. She's a beautiful heart and a soul full of amazing wisdom. And I'm so grateful that she's here doing this show with me, because it is divinely ordered. Welcome, Susan.
Hi, Debbie. Hi, everyone. Just so glad to be here tonight. And what you said, Deb, we were fast friends. So I'm really, you were quite the put together from God, sure. So I'm just thrilled.
Well, that's very sweet. I appreciate that, and I feel the same way as you. Now, I need somebody to tell us kind of what the sound quality is that you're hearing on the show, because I'm hearing an echo. So if you can let me know if you're hearing an echo, I would like to know that, because if that's the case, I might have to close out of the video and just do it streaming on angelheartradio.com. Now, I'm going to ask Susan to tell you a little bit about herself, her story, and how she got where she is. And she has a beautiful book called Nurture, and so she can tell you about that as well.
Well, thanks, Deb. Oh my gosh, it's a good thing we have a 90-minute show, right? There's always a lot to tell. I'm just going to be brief about it and just say, my journey's been lifetime from a child, just really always happy, joyful. And, I just feel God's always been with me, and the love has always been with me, but it was pretty circuitous along the way of getting to know God in the way I know him now. So the main, I guess, teaching that I've had, certainly I've had lots of courses and lots of education and all kinds of opportunities along the way to teach others and help others. But the most amazing thing that's happened the past couple of decades with working in private practice with the beautiful souls and clients that I've had. I mean, it's just been an awesome journey, and they have taught me. They are the ones. I believe God uses wonderful relationships with others. So, while people would call it work, psychotherapy for me, it was a journey of seeing people suffering and just getting in their lives, getting into, families. I would have single clients, or I would have multiple generations, and just getting to know them. And I just kept hearing the suffering. And when you're a secular counselor and you can't really talk about God unless your client brings it up, as you know, Debbie, because you've been in this work yourself, it's really hard, because for me personally, that's the only thing that ever got me through any of my own suffering. So I thought, whoa, this is tough. But thank goodness most of my clients, somehow God orchestrated all of that. They would ask, and they would bring it in, and they would talk about it. So as they did, and many of them were in 12-step programs, which is very God-based, and God as you understand him. And that's what I love about what you and I are doing, Deb. It's God as we understand him. It's not us trying to preach any sermons or saying, oh, this is what you should do. It's not about religion. It's about relationship and the journey of getting to know God, and especially through other people. I mean, that's just been the beauty. I've had wonderful friends all my life, and those would be people that God would put together with me. But the clients just taught me so much, because through suffering, we really, really get into the depth of, grief and loss and all those things. So that's mainly, and that's what led me to write Nurture, because I used some of the stories of my clients and talked about how nurture is the word to me, that you take your human nature, you take God's nature, and inside of us, there is this beautiful essence that needs nurturing. And only God can do that, as you know. And so that's what I hope to really bring into the light to help people, maybe learn some of the things that you and I talk about all the time, and find just a deeper meaning in that regard.
Okay. And that's beautiful. So Susan and I have somewhat of similar backgrounds. I was a counselor for 18 years and worked in mental health and drug and alcohol. And by the way, if you can't hear me on Facebook Live, can you please give me a shout out so that I know that you're hearing me, because I turned my volume all the way down. And it was important for me to heal myself. And when I recognized that I was suffering for so long, in pain, emotional pain, that I didn't realize that was still there. I thought I healed myself. And 3.5, 4 years ago, I started on a spiritual awakening. And it has completely changed my life. And I too have written books that have been channeled. And my books came through Jesus. And there's 2 out so far. The third one will be out soon. What this show is about is defining terms for people, and of what our Creator is, and what our Creator's will is for us, regardless of what you call your Creator. There is no right or wrong. There's no good or bad. And we're going to get into all of that today. So I want to start by, maybe Susan, you can talk a little bit about how do you describe your Creator? What do you call your Creator? And you're already saying you call that God. But can you expand on that? And then I'll just give some ideas about my own self and my experience.
Sure, I'd be glad. So personally for me, it's always been God in the beginning, or, Lord, or some higher name. And it would be more like that whole idea of, in the beginning, a more separate kind of an out there. But then that began to shift and change. And that really came through, as you said, Jesus, because the teachings of Jesus are so beautiful. How could you not fall in love with them? The problem is, when you some of the formal religions, so for me personally, I wasn't experiencing that in a formal church setting a lot of the time. It was more judgment, and there was all this kind of stuff that just didn't really fit and didn't sound right. It just didn't, even in my head or heart, didn't really sound right. So a lot of the time for me, still had to just go to God and the word love. I mean, there's love here, because I can feel it, I can sense it, I know it, and when I connect with other people, and but it was more about God and not this relational being. So I found, through a lot of my own journey and my own, I'm diving into every book I can read. I'm like a book junkie, trying to figure out, what is this connection? How do you get this connection? How do you get this relationship that people, quote unquote, talk about all the time? So that just came through much meditation. And you can call that prayer, you can call that meditation, but it's really getting quiet and reading about God is good. That's helpful. But getting quiet and being with God, then you do get personal. And it is Jesus, it is the Holy Spirit, it is the essence of God. It is we have words and terms that we use, but it's personal, and it's a perceptual inner. You have to go inside. There's a journey inside. There is, God's in everything. So it's not like this outside thing. It's got to go in and clean out all the old lies and the old stuff you believed about yourself. So there's room to meet and open that door that is talked about with Jesus. So I think it's interesting that you and I came together and had these total same things, where your story, which I'm going to turn it over to you, is like the backgrounds are so different.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead.
Right. So my experience was, I was raised Jewish, but I was a cultural Jew. I was not really brought up in the religion. I never had a bat mitzvah. So I didn't really have a foundation of what it really meant spiritually to be Jewish, just culturally. And so when I had some problems about 3.5, 4 years ago with some family members, and for the first time I started asking, what am I doing to create my pain? Or what am I doing that is creating relationship issues, rather than looking at somebody else? It opened up a doorway for me to start looking inside myself in a much different way than I ever had. And I came across somebody's work, Margaret Paul, who I love, who teaches inner bonding. And I decided to go to a workshop of hers to find out, what is this that I'm doing that's creating pain in myself? And during this meditation, and by the way, it was the first time I ever meditated. I always did relaxation with my clients, but I never meditated. And during that meditation, spirit came to me. And what I realized is that I could hear and see spirit. And it was a very, very healing time of realizing that there was so many different unhealed parts of me, wounded children, that really needed love. And I didn't know how to do that. I had no idea how to love myself. And so the experience became where I started to practice meditation. It took me probably a good 1.5 years to get a solid meditation practice. And while I was having this meditation practice, probably maybe 3 weeks after the workshop, I realized, I'm sitting here with spirit, and actually I had no idea it was Jesus, because I just really didn't have a reference of Jesus, because he was, I considered him Christian, which of course I have found out all kinds of other things since then. And so what happened is that Jesus and God and the angels had come to me regularly trying to show me what needed to be healed within myself. And there's a two-way dialogue, and all of us have the ability to do this, but nobody's really taught us that we can do this. And some of us have happened upon it through our meditation or some spiritual awakening. But the truth is that every single one of us are able to do this. Now, each one of us are on our own unique journey. So how we experience the divine all has to do with our life and our purpose. And so some of us might receive it through a religious context, spiritual context, love context. Mine was not religious at all. It was a universal consciousness. And this, what you're doing, what I call spiritual reparenting, and this is what's just so awesome, is that Susan calls the same thing nurture. And spiritual reparenting is undoing all the things that you learned about yourself and that you were programmed through family, through society, through culture, religion, and it gets all of that stuff out of the way, and you are taught who you truly are. And it is the most loving, blissful, peaceful, joyful experience that I can describe, is to have that type of connection within yourself. So I do call unconditional universal love consciousness. I call that God. And I think part of what we're going to talk about is that many religions or people believe that if you use the term God, then you're automatically Christian. You're not even Jewish or whatever other religion. So I think that we are here to define some terms, because there's a whole lot of spiritual people out there that call unconditional love consciousness God, and it has nothing to do with religion. Not that it has, that's a problem. There is absolutely no wrong or right about religion. Nobody has the truth over anybody else. Actually, all of our truths are our personal truth. So
and they're coming from God. That's what you're saying.
Yes, and all of that teaching is coming from God or your creator or Buddha or goddess or anything that you want to call unconditional love. So I would look at God's religion as love. And that is just the way that I experience divinity. Now, through teaching, and a lot of what we'll be talking about is higher consciousness. So what Jesus has told me is, I asked him, what is consciousness? Because I can't even wrap my head around that. What is consciousness? He said it's a state of mind or state of being. You recognize it as being present or in a now moment, but it is much more expansive than that. Consciousness is everything. It is all that exists. There is nothing else. It is love, light, and knowledge. It's God's power and creativity. And that is the only thing that exists in our world, is God's, as God, as consciousness. So, Susan, I'll let you go into a little bit more of describing, you know, terms or what we're talking about, higher consciousness. And
Yeah, just I mean the you have covered so much good ground there, Debbie. I mean, when you know, and when you think about it and you read the teachings of Jesus, and there's no evidence where Jesus came to start any religion. He came to show God, because he is God. So that consciousness that was present with that oneness that he always talks about, I'm one with the Father. So the Father is the reference to God. And a lot of people do struggle, and many of my people that I've worked with struggle with words, terms like God, never Jesus. That's the interesting thing, because everybody loves Jesus. Like, I don't have a problem with Jesus. No, go, I don't have a problem with Christ. I have a problem with Christians, or I have a problem with, and whatever denomination of a religion or whatever they'll talk about. When you can get to people one on one and really listen to them, this everything starts sounding like what Jesus was saying in all of the texts that you read. I came to show you love, and the only two things that really matter are that we love God and that we love one another, because the source love is what gives us the ability to love one another. But if you're filled with fear and divisions, that, oh, well, that person is different and they believe different, so I don't know about what. But that's that suspicious, fearful mind. And when fear controls, then we can't really, get into a relationship with other people and really hear what they do believe, because we have those judgments going on and knocking us upside our heads and really getting into confusion. It was interesting. Just recently, I was in LA, and I was at a conference sat next to a gentleman from Saudi Arabia. Now here, he's just here as an international student. So we got talking on one of the breaks, and I'm listening. And it's so interesting about words. Pain is pain. People have emotional pain. They have suffering. God is God. They know God. They're seeking. And they hear the message of what they want: healing. They want healing in their life. They want to be able to connect with others. And that was his pain. He said, my mother was emotionally unavailable. Okay, so he's on the other side of the world growing up, and I go, so was mine. That's interesting. So we have this immediate bond, like you were talking, that you learned. And this bond is consciousness. This bond is God. This bond is what Jesus was teaching and showing, that there's a divine in all of us. And when we do get awakened to that power and that love, it's unconditional. It is unconditional, and it helps us do what you were talking about, do some of that unwinding and the old programs, the old training that has been going on, running the tape. And I did want to mention that before we take calls or whatever, you have to understand that conditional love is a human. That is conditioned. We were all conditioned by someone and many someones, and those voices are paradigms that still roll around inside of us, and the memory in our brain is going to go to survivor memory, and that's our human. We're going to do anything to survive. And if you perceive a threat from someone who's different because they think differently or whatever, you will probably close off to them. That's what we do as a human. When you see that there are no threats, I can hear how you believe, and I don't have to make you believe as I do. But if I relate to you and love you, I'm going to have more connection and more ability to just, hang out and find joy. And we'll probably strike up many things like you and I did, Debbie, just coming together, going, yeah, when I read your books, I go, I could have written this. This is inside of me too, but I'm going to express it differently because I'm me and my experiences. And I'm maybe even going to use the different terms, but they're words. And in the beginning was the Word. That's the word in Genesis, and the Word became flesh. Well, you're the Word, and you're flesh, and Jesus is the Word, and that's what he's telling us. We need to get in this oneness of being able to love one another and let that come from God without judgment.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is the spiritual path of walking that path and learning self-love so that you can love everybody else, because everything outside of us is a reflection of what's going on inside of us. So, because we live in duality, we are experiencing our divinity, and you're experiencing the ego. And so we have this contrast that is always showing us inside what needs to be corrected. And as we do these shows, we're going to be talking about the spiritual path and all the things that we bump up against, and what makes it difficult to do this work, because you have to want to put the effort in, and you do that by meditating, praying. Sometimes it's indulging in a creative project that helps you connect to the divine. So, or nature. Everybody does it in a different way, but I do know that I'm told that when you're quiet and still is when teaching can happen. But it has to, you have to be open to it. You have to want it and not be afraid of it, because,
Yeah.
I know I went through that. I went through, oh my goodness, what am I going to hear? What, am I going to get yelled at or scolded, or they're going to tell me that I'm doing something wrong? And I never hear anything like that. It's complete acceptance. Um, and it's very loving.
What would you say, Deb, to someone who says, and I've had clients that have said this, try to meditate, but I can't hear anything, or I hear, all I can hear is like this constant, and my mind is hopping around here and there. What would you say to someone?
Well, something that I've learned, and we could talk a little bit about the ego, because, and that goes by different words or names too: the enemy, the assumer, the wounded selves, the shadow side. But I'm calling it the ego. Is it's an energetic illusion that accompanies us through this incarnation, and it's to bring contrast. So it's all spiritually purposeful, and it's all part of God, because nothing is separate from God. It's what we have for this experience.
Do you see that remember we talked about, maybe, do you see it's part of our survivor of what it helps, what helps us? Okay, go.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to.
No, that's important, because it has helped us survive. I know it's helped me survive. I've had a lot of trauma in my life, and if that part didn't take over me, I don't know where I'd be today. I may not even be here, because all it wants to do is survive and get love. And so we all do that in whatever way we think is right, because we don't understand that we already are loved and love. So when I meditate, I still hear chatter in my head. I still hear my ego just like yap, 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 yap. And and other parts of us, we have loads of different parts of us that accompany us for this trip. And those are going to be there. They don't go away. They get less over time. And in A Course in Miracles, it has a beautiful saying about those voices are supposed to be there. It's us that does not like them there. We don't want them there because they're annoying. And we have to accept the fact that these voices are with us, and there's reason for them, and it can be looked upon as a gentle awakening, that every time you hear that voice while you're trying to meditate or doing anything else, is that you can look at it as a gentle awakening, and where you get to choose whether you want to listen to it or not, or dismiss it. And with the ego
or let
voice,
it just kind of pass through,
yes,
and observe and go, well, that's interesting that
yes,
came up for me. Right? I kind of like have gotten to the point myself where there is such a oneness that it doesn't, don't even get the voices. There's more one voice. I mean, it sounds like mine, but it's
Mm-hmm.
that more oneness. And so I can really kind of discern when, and I'm sure you've experienced this as well. And I'm sure, hopefully, people who are watching and listening, just trust that you are hearing, and the voice that is gentle, the voice that is telling you, no, it might have something to give you an information and say, you
Mm-hmm.
better pay attention to that. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not just like this cookie cutter, nice guy or nice girl voice. It definitely says, so it can bring you up short, but it's not going to do it in a harsh and, like a bad dad or something way. It's really very gentle nudging, and you just know what you know. So it is personal. I can't. It's very hard to describe, but I know everyone listening has heard that and loves to hear that. And
Yeah, the
you have to
divine
trust it.
voice. You're talking
It
about the
is.
divine voice, yes, versus
I am
the ego voice. And
exactly.
and so our oneness, this has taken me a lot to even digest a lot of this information that Jesus and God has been teaching me and the angels, is that our oneness, we are already whole, even though we have an ego voice and all of these things are part of our oneness. And I spent a lot of time on my journey trying to get rid of it. Like, I didn't want it to be part of me. It was annoying. I don't want to hear it. I would bicker with it. Um, and so it is important to understand that we are already whole, even though we have all of these different voices, the ego and the wounds and your divine self, and that they are, we're already, it is one, because there
and
cannot be
and
any
those
separation.
No, because they're all parts of our immaturity as we
Mm-hmm.
were, growing up. There's not a person on the planet. I mean, I love that people, talk about PTSD, because we do have some serious trauma going on in people's lives, and things they've had to endure, terrible suffering. But really, the truth is, everybody has a suffering story. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
has pain and suffering. And out of that, there will be these defenses that will rise up to help protect you when you're in the midst of those things. But the problem is, if we only have our humanity to deal with them and our conditions of our humanity, we're missing the healing bomb, because our brain will hijack into survivor mode, and that survivor mode will go to fight, flight, or freeze. And when we fight, there's your aggression. Don't come near me. I'm going to tell you off, or whatever I'm going to do. Blow a gasket. We were laughing about this earlier,
Right.
but that'll just make people stand back, or I'm going to freeze up, and not say anything and stuff it, kind of thing. But these are all animal instincts. If you think about it, you got your lion that roars, or your bear, and you've got your rabbit that runs away. That's your flight, scaredy cat. You got the possum that plays dead. So
Mm-hmm.
those are part of our animal nature, and that's what our brain does. It goes into this hijack mode, and our emotional trust and feelings shut down and get locked into this place. And when you see people being reactive and immature, that's because they haven't experienced that healing love that is available, and they're judging themselves, and then they do that, and oh, I wish I hadn't done that, I hate that I'm angry. Now the spin cycle begins, and it's just that constant whir that does keep us from our peace. That
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, that was a
So
great description. I know that when I first started to do this work on the spiritual journey, I was like, why didn't anybody tell me about the ego before? Why, why, life would have been so different had I known that this is a part of us that really it's an illusion, but it's part of us. And, but not to take to heart what it says, what it thinks, what it does. And so I this is what's creating most of the suffering in us, is the ego,
yeah.
because everything is truly love. there is nothing else that exists but love. And the the energetic illusion of life is all based on fear, all fear of scarcity, of rejection, abandonment. I mean, there's a whole ball of
I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I don't
yeah,
have enough.
yes,
That's the one I love. That is
yes.
so common to
Mm-hmm,
everyone you ever meet. Deep down, fear of
mm-hmm.
abandonment, and I'm not good enough, which is and I love scarcity because I call it scare city. Two words. You get stuck
Right.
there and you dwell there. You live there. You pitch a tent. You build a house, and
Yep.
now you are really you're more than camping out in scarcity. So you get those subliminal messages, you don't
Mm-hmm.
have enough. And that is the ego talking to you. That is,
It,
it's not
it,
true. No, get behind, get out of here. That is so not true. But when you
right.
do that, you actually just keep the war going. So that's what we're talking about. When we're talking about, the creator of love is not talking like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's not picking up every little scrap of scavenger dog. That's the ego
Mm-hmm.
talking and wanting you to pay attention. But it's also can be thought of as your little child that is very wounded and just begging you to find some healing. But in the brain hijack, you don't get that because it doesn't come up and say, hey, I'm your scavenger dog ego trying to get you messed up
Right.
in your head.
It's really slinky. I call
Yeah.
it sticky, icky, slinky because it is so good at what it does. It's really, truly amazing. So,
And in 12 step, that term, what about that term stinking thinking? I love
yeah.
that
Mm-hmm.
because that is classic ego, stinking thinking, and you
Mm-hmm.
get stuck in that mode. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get back to some more defining of, so we talked a little bit about how we experience God or our creator or whatever we believe that universal love is, consciousness. So what is God's will? What is our creator's will for everybody?
Boy, would you have a question that is like, that's a big one, isn't it? That is
It's
a
a,
big one.
mm-hmm,
Loving it, loving it. Okay, so how I personally, and remember, this is about your into me see. When you're looking into yourself, you're seeing your own intimacy with God. So the connection for God's will, it's not like he's hiding it from you. It's not like he's not telling you. And so then people go, well, they'll use a moral code or 10 commandments, which Jesus clearly has said, and this is biblical referencing. You can't keep those. Those are laws to show you how you're missing, and you're incapable of keeping those laws. So Jesus is this teacher that forms and gives you the Holy Spirit to help you understand God's will. So when you're under the influence of the intimacy with God, well, it's like, for example, me, I inherited the duty to be the executor of my dad's will. So my father and mother had gone and set up their will. They laid it out very. Now I had a fiduciary responsibility to carry out that will. I couldn't I had a little play, a little room, I had a little free will that I could do with it, but I had the law that kept me in the parameters of that. So I liken God's will to that. He's left us an inheritance. It's a gift. God's all about giving. That's who God is. God's the giver. You're the receiver. And if you think of it in terms of a will, an earthly will, it's an inheritance that we all have. And when you tap into it, and then you go, whoa, I had no idea I inherited all this great stuff from God, because here you were over in Scare City, living over there, and you thought you didn't have all this great stuff. Now you find out, wow. So there's not so much mystery, because it's really about the dreams that God's given you. And since you know your identity, you know that you matter, that God cares so much and he's interested in your life. He has given you free will, but free will under the influence of fear becomes fear controlled. And then that is what we were just talking about a few minutes ago, is that you're going to be scared and you're going to hunker down and you're going to miss God's best because you're not tuned in to the right channel. So when you're channeling God, you're channeling Jesus, you are channeling truth, and then you're able to dream your dreams because they're coming from this one channel, and things start to happen. I'll just give a quick example for myself. When I was first getting into private practice, there were like a gazillion counselors in the city I was living in. But I thought, well, naive, I'm going to go out and hang out my shingle. And, I'm hoping God, is going to bring clients. But I mean, there was no guarantee. I had this divine appointment. I just happened to sit down next to a gentleman, and we began talking. And we were at a counselor meeting and stuff in town. And he said, well, what do you do? And I go, oh, I'm a therapist. And he goes, well, what's your specialty? And I go, oh, so I start just talking. And he goes, do you ever work with addictions? And he said, yeah, I definitely have had a lot of experience facilitating 12-step and that. He goes, how about sexual addiction? I go, what? Well, wait a minute. No, I know what that is, I think, but I'm not sure. So as we talked, he said, how would you like to come work for me? Now, I had been talking to him for 15 minutes, and I had no idea who he was, nothing. It was a divine appointment that set me and launched me into he would feed many clients to me in the years to come, and it would be what launched me into what I ended up doing, not just in a town, but all over the country and outside of the United States as well. So it's been quite a journey of just thinking of what a miracle example of putting that man in my life. And there's no way I could have met him. There's no way I would have ever even heard of him. But that was a God thing.
Yes. And this is happening every single day. This is happening to us every single day. But if we're not aware, if we're not awake, if we're not alert, we don't understand all the divine gifts that are brought to us every single day, because our Creator is constantly nudging us onto the path where we're supposed to be, of what our divine calling is, or a purpose of this lifetime. We're always being nudged there, but we don't, sometimes we become afraid, or we're just closed down, we're shut down, and that we don't see the miracles that are lined up for us all day long. It doesn't stop.
Do you think, Debbie, that there's a way that, people can understand how to be looking, for the miracles, for these quote unquote coincidences? Because there are no coincidences. We don't believe, Deb and I do not believe in coincidences. We know they don't exist. Is there a way?
Well, everybody gets things differently. I think that the more you meditate, the more you try to have a divine connection, then you are starting to be awakened. And therefore, I call it the veil of unconsciousness, starts to lift incrementally, because it comes down, it goes up and down all day long. And then you start to see, I guess people would call it serendipity. You would see things that look like coincidences, or something keeps ending up in your favor all the time. It could be even as silly as a parking spot. Some people,
can I just mention that I had one of my clients the other day was talking, and he was saying, I know God's not going to give me a parking spot, but I believe he's interested in the bigger things. And I just had to chuckle, and okay, if that's where you're at, it's okay. Or some people start out that they have enough faith to believe in a parking spot, but they don't have enough faith to believe in a job or a new career, new vocation, looking for a relationship. So
Right.
wherever you're at, we used to say at one time in this ministry I was involved with, God will meet you where you're at, and
Yes.
but he won't leave you there. He will never leave you there.
Right, right. So now maybe 25, 26, 27, 28 years ago, I had a dream. And the dream was completely laid out for me about I needed to go to college and what I needed to go to college for. And it was so, hmm, it was so divine that I knew that I was being spoken to in my dream. And the next day I went and enrolled in college for what I was being told to do. So these are things too, because um, we get these powerful messages all day long, but we don't always follow them. And what happens is when you start to follow them, you find that your life starts to fall into sync. Now we're talking about God, what is God's will. So for me, this is what I hear every single morning. I have for the last 3.5 years. God just wants you to be happy. That is God's will. God wants you to be happy. And Jesus is just an amazing teacher. And this is my lesson. So all my lessons I teach because I'm still working on all of them myself. This is a journey. They don't happen overnight that you reach different skill levels. So he said that when we allow ourselves to believe that our Creator is in control, it takes away fear. But only if we have faith in a God whose great joy is to love you and wants you to be happy. When you are able to commit to this belief, your whole life shifts from struggle to feeling blessed. All it takes is letting go and believing, letting go of the control and worry, because you are always safe. You are your Father's greatest joy. And that's another thing I probably need to expand on, is that I experience God's energy. I experience universal unconditional love as masculine energy. So I still call God him. However, I've had lots of time with the feminine side of God, goddess. And so God is everything. But I do, when I talk about God, I use the term him. And because he has been very fatherly to me, I needed a strong, loving father to heal a lot of my wounds. And because that is what I needed, that is the way that I experience divine energy. So again, there's no wrong or right of how one experiences divine love, or what you call it, or how you practice it.
So in that regard, can I just jump in for a second as well? That was really a big shift for me, because always it was God the Father, but I always thought of a nurturing God. I didn't think of an angry, punishing. But the interesting thing is, if you look at the teachings of Jesus, that's what Jesus is saying. He's saying there is no Jew, there is no Gentile, there is no male, there is no female. Everything is transcendent when you're with God, because it's spirit and it's outside of the way we think. So this whole idea of, I had noticed even someone had made a comment of, they said, one race. And I love that, because that's my dream. My divine dream is that we will see ourselves under the influence of, I call it cog, the cog rail, like in a town I used to live in. But cog is children of God. We're all children of God.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever parent, you know, and if you had, you know, both of your parents that were like unavailable, you know, he's either way. I mean, but there's
Mm-hmm.
the nurture. That's what I was talking about in my book, is the holy nurture comes through spirit, and spirit is transcends our human ideas. It's the ideal being of perfect love. And that is what you need to tap into. And again, like you said, it's a process. It's
Mm-hmm.
definitely is a journey of it's a relationship. It's personal. It's intimate, and it can be exactly what you need all the time.
Mm-hmm. It is exactly what you need all the time. So God's will is actually for each of us to awaken and to come back home to understanding who we truly are so that he can nurture us and remember, because we've all forgotten who we are. So and it's all purposeful that we forgot who we are, because it's part of this incarnation. We needed to forget. And the journey is about going back and remembering who we are and the oneness, and that you came here with a purpose, and that your life was supposed to be a certain way. Everything is in divine order. Everything is working perfectly. Um, there is no step that is not accounted for. And this is all God's love. God just wants you to come back and have a intimate relationship. And so you can develop into all of what you were to be on this earth.
So are you equating the will of God with your identity, the relationship, the intimacy with God, your purpose? Everything is like all wrapped into this being that you are. And it starts with knowing the joy and love and happiness that God wants you to be happy, and whatever it is your, so it's about first about being, right? It's about being that child that needs to be reparented, and knowing that, you know, it'll be a loving will and you'll experience peace and joy. So if you're out of that balance, then what? What if you're not doing that? What if you're like in a lot of pain and you're going, this is not, I am not happy.
I did that for 56 years. What was interesting, because I was like, I had this divine dream, 28 years ago, and it got me moving into practicing being a counselor and doing something that I love to do, working with people. And so I was on the right track, just like what you were talking about. You got put on the right track of where you were supposed to go. But the other part of me, the ego part, and the wounded parts of myself were so suffering, and I didn't know it, because I had repressed my feelings, and I just needed to suck it up and get on with life and just go. Pull your boots up by the bootstraps and just go. And so I spent a good part of my life anxious. I didn't even know I was anxious, because I hid it from myself so well. I didn't know that I had anxiety. And so what I realized is that I don't have to carry this stuff anymore. I could be healed from it. I could be healed in a way that you cannot be healed in any other way. When only God, your creator's love, heals in such fullness that you cannot get that from any place else because of the depth of it. So when you can allow yourself to be healed in that way, and to rid yourself of things that you're carrying that are just actually making you suffer, and It can make you suffer emotionally. You can suffer medically, with physical problems, just from having, um, just from having things going on with you that you don't even understand the depths of it, and that none of it's your fault, and growth needs to happen, and all of that stuff is lifted from you. So we're all, I believe, I call, myself like the walking dead. Part of me was happy, I'm doing what I'm doing, and the other part of me was just miserable, and I was so disconnected and self-rejecting and had self-hatred and had no clue that that was happening with me on another level. And here I was, a therapist, and thinking I healed myself. And so I learned that I was an unhealed healer. And many of us are experiencing that because we have not really truly been divinely guided and divinely healed the way that we need to, so that we do understand what this life really is, because we don't understand what it really is.
I love the way your face was lighting up after you were talking about your pain, and then you came into the light, which was like your whole countenance changed,
Mm-hmm.
so you could visually see that. By the way, I just went out to get my phone. Would you believe it actually was running low on battery, and I had it all charged up? So, you know,
Oh.
so anyway,
Now,
yeah, it was beautiful to hear that, Deb, because
mm-hmm.
it does show the dark and the light. And that's part of, when you're not hearing God's will because you're in so much suffering and you just don't know what you don't know. That's
Mm-hmm.
the greatest problem. And that is that
Mm-hmm.
awakening that you spoke about in the beginning here, of getting to know God and know who he is, know of his love. But that block is always there. That's that veil. And like you said, it goes up and down. I call it the fog. One of my clients said the other day, he said that, he's awake. He's totally awake, but he's very upset because in his work, during the daytime, he goes, how do you stay awake with the sleepers? And that's a good question. Let's talk about that, right?
Yeah, right. And that's something we all have to build compassion for, because we were asleep for a long time.
Exactly.
And it's just building compassion. So I have somebody asking me, is meditation one of the keys to help you find out like what your purpose is? And yes, because when you are meditating, you should be able to hear. Now, I actually hear in my mind, like I can hear almost with my ears when spirit is talking to me, but I also hear with my heart. So if we cannot hear with our ears, you can, what floats up in your heart that's how you're being spoken to. You just know it, like an answer just floats up. So
excellent question. That's a great question, because research shows that actually meditation is probably the best way, and especially even only 5 minutes in the morning. If you can even believe that, just a 5-minute meditation or an ask for help, just ask Spirit, help me today to see things in the way you would have me, through the eyes of love, the perceptual difference that, lift off the veil. And you'll be amazed if you just have that quiet 5 minutes instead of racing out the door. And then if you could really also be able to, just get throughout the day, I'm not sure whatever it is that you would want to do, that you would be able to set your alarm on your phone or whatever, just as a reminder that you are intentionally wanting to be mindful, wanting to be present and experience that presence. And that is where God will meet you, even in the moment. Because that's the main thing, is that we don't lapse into, the robot, the program, the trance, the hypnosis, whatever you want to call it, to stay mindful of presence all day. And then again, your meditation at night, it can be guided. It can be your own quiet. There is no right or wrong on that either.
Right. So what I would say is if you can start with even 5 minutes, it's great. I meditate, journal, and pray for about 2.5 hours in the morning. Not everybody has the ability to do that. You have to get up pretty early. And the thing is there is absolutely no separation between you and the divine. So the divine is talking with you all day long. It's just that we're shut down to it. The ego doesn't want to hear it. And we have to start discerning that voice that the ego's chatter and doesn't want to hear anything that the divine has to say because it doesn't believe in it. So we have to just keep being quiet throughout the day. You don't even have to go into meditation. Just be still and quiet. You could just close your eyes and you can ask a question, and then answers will just float up with inside of you. Now I do have a caller on the line, and I just want to make sure.
I want to add one more thing. Throughout the day, here's another thing. If you take a walk, if you go for a run, boy, that's a great time too, because you're in motion. And I know I've done practice just because I was so intentionally desiring to have this connection, where I would just go on my walk and I would listen at the corner and go, turn left, turn right. And believe me, that worked. It really did. God started training me to be able to hear, turn this way, turn that way, because I wanted it so much. So that's another thing. And also connecting with nature on your walks or your runs, everything in nature is a total symbol of God, and God is in all of that. So your birds, your trees, your snowfall, whatever, it's always there available. So that is just another way to absorb throughout the day, training your mind to stay present with that beautiful essence.
Oh yeah, that's beautifully said. It's very important. Nature is amazing, and it can connect us right away because of our senses. So our senses feast on what we're seeing or smelling or whatever. We're taking it in our senses, and that brings you a direct link to your creator. Now, there's a person on at their phone starts with 716. If you would like to ask us a question, can you please press 1 on your phone pad? And if you're just listening, that's fine. Don't press 1. Okay. So I'm going to take a phone call, although I don't know that anybody's going to hear what the question is. But hi, this is Zeb. Who am I speaking with? Hi, Al. Nice. Hi. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and I just wanted to make sure that our audience on live, I don't think is hearing you. So I just wanted to reiterate what you're saying. We have Al on the line, and he's talking about how everybody is exactly where they're supposed to be in their life right now, that there's no wrongs or rights. It may not feel right to you, but you are exactly where you need to be in your journey. And to be okay with that wherever you are at this moment, and not to judge that. So Al, thank you. And you have something else you wanted to say. Okay. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Right. 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 I right. Right. What a great no. I'm so glad that you brought this up, Al.
Yeah.
Because it's a wonderful that we define some terms here. Now, Al is saying that we haven't clarified what the difference is between unconditional and conditional love is. And for me, unconditional love is you don't have to do, be anything than you already are, and you are completely loved and taken care of and upheld in the most highest way you can. Sort of like when a baby's born, everybody's just like, "Ooh, the baby," and the baby's got this regard of amazingness. That is the same way that our Creator looks at us. So for unconditional love, which I had done most of my life, is you need to be who I need you to be so that I'm comfortable. So I need you to change what you're doing. I need to make you to make me happy. Um, it has to look a certain way. It is with judgment, and unconditional love has no judgment. It's all about allowing. So allowing somebody to be exactly who they are and know that there is absolutely nothing wrong with them and that they're loved regardless of what they look like, what they're doing, what they're saying, that they are completely accepted and loved just because. So that would,
Okay. Can I give mine then? Okay. Oh,
yeah, yes. Susan wanted to give some comment too.
I wanted to make a comment first. Is that okay? Okay. So unconditional love comes from source, and source
Mm-hmm.
is divine, and source is perfect. So it's perfect love. So it casts out all fear and judgment, because that's even scriptural. It says perfect love casts out fear, and there is no fear when you're under that perfect love. So there is no need for judgment of self or others. And so people have a problem with that. Well, what do I do? Don't I have to judge someone? No, that is not your job to judge anyone. Just
Mm-hmm.
be under that love and know that it's source, feel showered with it. And there will be ways that, things will happen as far as what happens with, if somebody's hurting somebody else or all that. But just to define conditional love, Deb was spot on with saying, you need to be who I need you to be. That's a condition. Or you need to follow this rule or that, code or whatever. I'm making this all up in my head, by the way. It's a perception that everybody is having. They're making up, and they're making up that the other person is making them, they're justifying why they have to have conditions put on the love. That's not true. That's false belief, and it's coming from the ego. So back to source love. Source love is not doing that. God is saying, you're amazing, and I will take care of everything that I need to redeem in you, and I will do it in the best way possible if you will allow, as Debbie said, if you will
Mm-hmm.
allow me to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And bring you into the highest form that you could be, is to bring you into your highest of coming
Yeah,
into
that's
yourself fully.
transformation.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's how
Yeah.
he makes butterflies.
Yeah.
That's how he created butterflies. They're in their highest form, right?
Right. Okay, Al. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And we talked about that earlier, and that's it's just so good to bring it up again, because for you to embrace and allow people to be who they truly are, you have to do that for yourself, and accepting who you are and love yourself in all facets. And yes, that will allow you to accept other people and love them as they are.
I actually have clients practice in the mirror of some, feedback that they
Mm-hmm.
can affirm that love and see behind the mirror that that's God speaking to them, and do that mirror work, because the brain is a mirror and we do look at other people, and that's how we're trained as children. We imprint with parents, and if we don't see that in our parents or in some other loving adult, it's really hard to I've had a lot of clients that just never got that imprint of love.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard for them to even do that mirror work and feel
Mm-hmm.
that love.
Yeah.
So
And I went through that myself, because I didn't feel loved as a child. And then as my journey went on and I would spend time with God, I projected all of my ugliness and self-hatred onto God, as that I still wasn't lovable. And it was really just spending time and allowing that nurturing, that reparenting to come through, that I got to the point where I could actually believe that I was lovable. And so it was these are things that lots of people deal with. And I guess Al popped off the line, so we didn't get to say goodbye, but he brought up some great questions for us, to talk more about. And what this
And
show.
Debbie, I have a question for you. You said it was hard for you. Now, after you had your awakening and Jesus and Spirit and the angels and God have connected with you, what I'd be interested to hear, what does Jesus say about that love? I'm sure you've asked him. What does he say to you personally about that love?
Well, that it's always there, and that I'm not disconnected from it. I am of it. So that's another thing, is because we're still looking at separation, that divine love is separate than us. And when it is, so when I do meditation and I might be with one of my angels, and the love that I feel is just overwhelming, and she tells me, you are feeling your own love. This is you that you're feeling. This is who you are. And this is some more stuff as a human that we have a lot of difficulty wrapping our head around, that that there is no separation at all. So you're getting to feel your own self. In fact, that's what coming home is. Coming home is learning that you are no different than God, that you are, I am. It is the same. It is the same love. It is the same source. It is the same everything. Um, but
And
I
again,
do know.
biblical referencing, that's we're made in God's image, and
Mm-hmm.
therefore we're an idea from the, I noticed someone had mentioned A Course in Miracles. We're an idea from the mind of God, God's imagination. So we're all part of that consciousness. And the only reason that we're not acting that way is because of our human conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
And in this incarnation, we're all in a process of waking up and remembering, oh, this is really who I am,
Right.
at
Right.
some level. At some level, everybody always knows that. When you
Yes.
tell them that, they always know that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you start to connect, and so I will say that I went from somebody who felt such emptiness in my heart for so long, for 56 years, that I felt so empty, to being so full, and that it never leaves, that fullness never leaves. that, you know, as I worked on this journey and this process of building and allowing myself to receive the love, because that was, you know, like it was a little tough there, because I
Well,
didn't know how to receive love. And so this was also part of my learning, is letting my guard down and allowing that love to nurture me, to love me back into healing, to love me into who I am, and recognize that this love is always there. It never leaves. I leave. Our ego takes a walk and walks away from God all day long. But if you keep coming back and keep coming home, you know that you are still home. You have never left. It's a trance that makes you feel that you're walking away from the divine all day long.
I love how you shared that experience of the emptiness, because again, you know, that empty vessel that we are, you know, needs a fill of the truth. So we are filled with so many lies from
Mm-hmm.
all of the things that we've been subjected to. It's very traumatic when we're thinking really about how many lies we're believing about ourselves and others through this judgment tree. When you get into the tree that is in the oneness, your vessel then is a newly filled vessel. You are, you know, in the language of Jesus, you're filled with the Holy Spirit. You're filled with the whole Spirit of God, which is holy. And that
Mm-hmm.
term just means what Al was saying on his call. You're perfect. You're
Mm-hmm.
perfect. So today is now. Today is God's outside of time and space. That's what there is. Right now, you're perfect. Tomorrow, you'll be in a new condition with unconditional love, and you'll be perfect then, but it'll be a
Mm-hmm.
different perfect, because we're
Right.
growing just like kids, you know, human
Right.
kids.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Excellent way to describe that. And what this show is it's about stopping suffering, because we want to help people connect and to this love that lies within you. It lives, it is who you are. There is no separation. And to understand that the ego brings on a trance that makes us feel that we are separate, and that you can heal at such deep depths that it changes your life forever, and you then can start being groomed for your purpose of what you came here to do, because there's always this polishing that's going on as you're learning and growing back into who you were, basically, because what the awakening is about is remembering who you were, that you're already it.
And that's a homecoming. You know,
Mm-hmm.
welcome home. You're back.
Welcome home.
Oh, you're back online. You know, you're
Yeah.
reconnected. You know, you're more of your, well, it's your true self, but even enhanced, because you're connected and plugged in to this continual, like you were saying, never empty, overflowing with this peace and joy. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and does that mean that you don't have problems? No, but your problems now have a new face on them, and you can ask, because it was a perceptual issue before. I was seeing them through this filter, this veil, this fog,
Right.
fear, obligation, and guilt, and
Mm-hmm.
shame. That's what I call fogs. So when you're under those influencers, they're heavy duty pressures. And
Yes.
when you're open up to love, it's light and joy. And so the problem you perceive, you're able to have the help, and voila, you know, you go through it. You're not
Right.
like fighting against it or whatever. Yeah.
Right. Right. You always have help every single day, every moment of the
Always.
day, of what you should do, what would be the best thing for you, what's in your best interest, and whatever's in your best interest is in the best interest of everybody else.
Yeah, it's a
So
win-win. That's
it's
good, Debbie. I'm glad you mentioned it. It'll be a win-win. It won't just be for you. It'll be for everybody involved
yes,
in whatever the situation is. Yeah.
right. So, we'll be talking more about, higher consciousness and fitting that into all of these terms as we're defining them. So one of the things that Jesus taught me is he said to stop looking at things as problems. They are energetic illusions. And so that's a whole nother thing. That will be a whole nother topic.
That'll be another show.
That will
and
be.
We will call them opportunity. I call them opportunities.
Yes.
I call them on-the-job training opportunities.
On-the-job training. Everything outside that we see is a, what did I call it? It is a mirror. It's a mirror image. It's a metaphor. Everything outside of us is a metaphor of what is going on inside of us on an internal dynamic. So getting to that point of seeing the energetic illusions are pretty interesting. And maybe we can just leave off with is, and we can talk about this next time, is that we are all here having an experiential exercise on earth, and we had to forget who we were to be here, and it is all about returning home back to our Creator, to who we were, and recognize that we had something to do specifically in this lifetime that we need to step into. And so many people feel this pull. I felt it all my life, is that I knew I was supposed to do something big, and I didn't know what it was. But I knew that there was something waiting for me without having a clue of what that was waiting. And each one of us, whether it's big or small, it doesn't matter. It's all love. But we each have to connect to actually understand what that purpose is.
And sometimes you will actually hear, like in my case, it was an astounding, it was more than a dream. I sat right up in bed where it was an audible voice. Not many people have this, but people do have. And certainly if you're open to receiving, you can hear, because God wants us to know. But it was, you're going to wake up the believers. And I'm going, what? Who are the believers? I don't know. What are you talking about? And, I knew it was God talking, but I didn't understand at that time that believers are sleeping, that we're all sleeping, and we're all in this trance, and we're in this duality because we're operating a double mind. And when you get in this oneness, wow, yeah, I did need a wake up call, and just to wake up to this unconditional love and the miracles, the healing, all of the amazing gifts and things that will come your way through what Deb is saying. They're not problems. It's a presentation, really, a gift to you. Every one of my clients will say, once they're healed and whole, if I hadn't gone through that, I would not be who I am. I would not know who I am. I didn't have a clue before of my identity. And now that I associate with my true identity, purpose reveals, because it's first the be, then the have. You have this presence, and then you can do anything. Really, there is no thing you cannot do.
And you don't always know what that is, because a lot of times it's a surprise. 2 years ago, Jesus said, go get your pad, we're going to write. And I was like, what do you mean I'm going to write? I don't know how to write. And he said, well, I'll tell you what to say, and you just write it down. And so, here comes 6 books now. So you just don't know what is going to come. And it could be something so different than what you ever imagined. It's about being open to follow whatever is being brought to you, to allow gifts that are coming that you may not always realize that they're gifts.
And you will love it. It will be something you will absolutely love, because it's perfectly designed for your design. That's the thing. I mean, it's like so cool. I
Mm-hmm.
love what I do. I love helping people. I love sharing, great news, and it's getting even greater now that I think that, there's just this avenue with you have to be healed through spirit. So,
Mm-hmm.
you can go to counseling. You will get help for your human conditions. But the healing, the deep, deep, deep healing has to be done through, offloading a lot of the toxic stuff that was handed down to you.
Yes. Yep. And most of us, and I know I was so grounded in the earth rather than in my divinity that I couldn't see anything other than what was on this earthly level. So the waking up process starts to let you know that there's something else going on here that you may not
Yeah.
know.
And
Anyway,
it's way bigger than
and it's
what
way
you could have
bigger.
ever hoped or imagined.
Yes,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and that comes back to what I had said before, is that you have to have faith in a God whose greatest joy is to love you and wants you to be happy. Because what is in store for your passion, for your purpose, like you said, is so much bigger and better you could have ever come up with on your own. It will be completely fulfilling. Now we only
And
have
well, one more final thing is know that every piece, every scrap, every horrible thing you've ever gone through that you might have deemed was just the worst thing ever will be redeemed.
yes,
And restored, and that is the healing process.
yes,
That
or
go ahead.
done. Or
Yeah.
done, not just experienced what you have done that maybe is not something you're happy about. All of
It'll be
it's
you.
redeemed. Yes,
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
is.
Mm-hmm.
Now we believe it or not, we're down to just under 2 minutes. So I want to give you a few minutes to tell people how to get in touch with you, and so we can close this show and say goodbye until a month from now, March 8th. We will have our next show.
Well, so if anybody wants to get in touch with me, you can use you can get me on Facebook anytime if you're on Facebook. But if you're not on Facebook, you can go to holygramspirit.com or lifehouserestoration.com. Both of those are, places where I have a website. And just really engage with us. I'd love to see you back on our next call. It's been a delight, and I cannot believe how time speed by. And I want to thank everybody for the comments on screen. They were wonderful.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you for listening in, and listen to it again, because I'm sure maybe there's some concepts or whatever that you had missed. I am so grateful to be here with you, Susan. I just feel so blessed that God brought us together. This radio show, this particular Universal Divine Healing Ministry, has been given to both of us divinely. So I know that we are exactly where we're supposed to be. This is what God wanted to see. And so we're
thank you, Debbie.
Happy to bring this to all of you, and now to be able to do it live video too is just awesome. Anyway, I feel so blessed. It's such a privilege to bring our listeners, all of my inspirational co-hosts and guests, to Angel Heart Radio. Everyone that I bring on, that I interview, has so much love, wisdom, and I learned so much from everybody, and I am very grateful to have this beautiful sacred space. So I want to thank Anaya for it, the founder of Angel Heart Radio.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Anaya.
Mm-hmm. And when in doubt, never underestimate the power of prayer. You are being listened to and heard throughout the universe, and it always responds with infinite and eternal love. Remember to go inside and listen through your heart for the whispers of heaven. And when you come home to God, you are coming home to yourself. I love you, and God bless you.
God bless you.
Bye-bye, everyone. God bless all of you.